Hello, this is Peter,
And hello, this is Maggie.
and we are two mystics walk into a bar, a title we're trying out and are stuck with now probably for a long
Probably,
time.
yes. Yes.
But we
Who's
wanted
in
to
your
have,
bar this week, Peter?
yeah. So I got an interesting Facebook message, a little under a week ago from a woman I hadn't spoken to in years. Her and her husband went to a church that Lori and I went to maybe 15 years ago called the Unity Center here in San Diego. So we'd crossed paths there in that wonderful kind of new thought,
Mm.
open-ended spiritual center. It felt a little bit like a refugee camp for all the folks that had left traditional religion, but still wanted spirituality, that SBNR, spiritual but not religious thing.
Yeah.
So
Unity
anyway,
helped me on my journey too, very much. So
yeah,
I'm with you. Go, yeah.
I know you've had some experience in that region as well. So lovely folks. Anyway, um, and she said, Peter, um, my husband is dying,
Mm.
and I wanted to talk to you about maybe doing his memorial service. And he's home now. He's in hospice. All all symptom care has been removed. We're in palliative care, keeping him comfortable. We have the hospital bed in the room, and so that was a bit of a shock. I just seen him last spring, and he'd come to one of my lectures. He seemed right as rain, but that's how life is. And so I said, without thinking, yes, of course I would.
Yeah.
I've had, I'm not a real minister. I have one of those Universal Life Church cards you get through a website so I can officiate weddings, and I've done some memorials as well. Not a real clergy like you, but in the end, she said, "Would you like to come see him? He'd really love to see you." So I said yes to that as well. And a couple days later, I was in his bedroom at their home here in town, and there he is in the hospital bed. And you've walked into the rooms of the dying
Mm.
before, and it's a it's a profound experience. We start speaking a little more quietly and reverently,
Mhm.
and when maybe that's not what they need at all, but that's how we feel. Maybe we ought to bring the jokes. But there he was looking like half the man he used to be. And I gave him a little Buddhist mala bracelet, and the three of us sat in a circle and talked. And she tried to bring up with him, what kind of things would you want to have at your memorial? But he was, after a couple of strokes, fairly nonverbal and not really able to offer up much. But I heard from her later that he was really thrilled that I'd come by, and that is such a powerful feeling.
Mm.
It's not the first thing you think of in the morning. Let's go hang around with dying people.
Mm.
But on the other hand, to come out of an experience like that, there is nothing that connects you to the root of existence itself,
Mm.
and it just shakes off all the trivial busyness
Mm.
than to be in the room with someone who is going to go soon. And no, none of us knew if he would linger for weeks or months or even a year.
Mm.
But she texted me 2 days later that he was gone.
Mm.
And so now we're in that kind of planning stage. It's such an honor to be brought in to walk alongside someone. I don't come in as some sort of
Mm.
death doula, not an expert. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but to be plucked out of the sky like that, to say, "Hey, maybe Peter Bolland would be a guy that could be
Yeah.
helpful here in these troubled waters." I know you've done this too in your life, in your many roles. What advice can you give me?
Well, whenever I do a funeral, it may sound deceitful, but I always have the goal of hoping that the people who came to the funeral believe that I knew them. Because
Mm,
I want to get so, I don't say I did know them, but I don't start off a funeral, so many people do, saying, I never had the honor to meet so and so. But
yeah,
because I think that disconnects you immediately.
yeah,
And of course, you have met him, you know him. So I
yes,
think
a little bit.
the the this is my friend aspect that I am grieving with you is incredibly important.
Yeah.
And of course, when I was first training, people were saying, "Oh, you mustn't cry, you mustn't cry." And of course, as a journalist for 40 years, I wasn't allowed to cry either because I had to report terrible things live on air. And
Right.
ever since I've been a journalist, two things: I've sworn like a trooper and I've cried non-stop once the pressure came off. So I very often do shed a tear at a funeral, and actually, it really helps the other people to know that. So the first bit of advice I would say, not that you need any, is
Well,
don't be afraid to let your emotions show there.
got it. Yeah.
And
That's
also, I
good.
always say at every funeral, we have to understand that life has changed forever.
Yeah.
And it is right that life has changed to get forever. It is correct that their going changes everything because
Yeah.
they mattered.
Yeah. The two memorials I've done before were, and they were about a year apart, were both young men who had died tragically and
Mm,
suddenly in their early 20s, one from a drug overdose and one in a car accident. And very different circumstances, isn't it?
mm, mm,
The person I'll be officiating for now was in his late 70s, had a
mm.
wonderful life, grown children, long marriage, just the deal,
Yeah,
just the whole thing that everybody wants.
mm.
And so there's a different flavor to the sorrow, I
Hugely
guess.
different. Yes. Yeah.
And I got thrown into the deep end on those first two because there's not like, some way to make cosmic sense out of this. It's just a disaster in all
Yeah.
directions. And you have to get really cosmically abstract to make that okay. Like, I don't know what we did, but
Yeah.
we honored that person and both of those young men. But this feels different because there is a kind of, this is just the season of winter
Yeah.
when things come to their natural they take their natural course, and this is exactly as it should be and must be. And there's a there's a beauty, there's a musical, theatrical kind of this is the last chord, this is the
Hmm.
curtain, and there's nothing wrong about any of this, even though it hurts like hell, and
Yeah.
you're just swimming in memories and so just to celebrate it that way is as a
A mit
celebration
a
and
mitzvah. It's a
not
blessing.
yeah, a
It's a
blessing.
blessing. Yes. And the trouble is we are so disconnected from death nowadays. Okay, we see thousands of murder mysteries on the telly, but they have no scent.
Yeah,
And I can tell you from a hospice chaplain and a reporter, serious crimes reporter, death smells.
yeah. Oh, it's all the senses.
Tragedies of life are really my favorite word this year has been visceral so far, visceral, this feeling it, experiencing it, going ah, or ooh or oh or whoa,
Yeah,
it's so important, and we step away from that aspect with death, I think. It's quite
yeah.
often because we just sanitize it. We don't have them in the front parlor anymore until the time of the funeral. We don't sit with them.
Right.
And yet I know death doulas who create a uterus around the death,
Mm,
and it needs to be what the person wants. And I still own up. I am hurt that my mother sent me away on her deathbed.
really?
I was sitting with her the day before she died, and we were talking, and she was saying, "Why am I seeing a bright orange light around you?
Oh my.
Why am I seeing trees? Why am I seeing people with dogs?" And I was saying, "Because the veil is thinning, Mum. And these are the people who are going to come and collect you, and your dad, or perhaps my dad, will come and collect you, and you're getting closer." And she was calming
Mm.
and she was getting fine. And then suddenly she went, "I don't want you seeing me die. Go away.
Wow.
I don't want you seeing me die."
What was that, you think? Embarrassment?
Well, it was one of two things. It could have been she didn't want me marked by seeing the death of my mother.
Oh,
But I think it was actually that I was never ever allowed to help her, Peter.
right, right.
And I knew more about dying than she did, and I don't think she wanted me there. I mean, that sounds really mean, but it was a pattern in life. But I had to accept it and go.
Yeah. In this case with this gentleman, he was home for months in this hospital bed,
Mm,
and there was an adult son in his 20s who shared round the clock caregiving with
yeah,
his wife, who was in her career an RN, a registered
mm,
nurse.
yeah,
So it was in some ways a kind of ideal situation in that everybody was there to smell
yes,
and
yes,
feel and witness, and like they
yeah,
lived with that dying process in
yeah,
their home, and not everybody gets that. It's in the case of the other two memorials I did, it was a very tragically different situation, sudden,
yeah,
shocking, unexpected, horrible,
yeah,
and life-changing. So that kind of sorrow seems to have a different intensity, I would imagine,
yeah,
than the natural death of an elder
yeah.
in
I think
at
mentioning
home.
that would be lovely.
Right, right.
I
No
really do think if
IVs.
they're all right with, if they're okay with it, say that this dying was a womb to the next world, if they
Yeah.
believe in the next world.
Yeah, and I think they're pretty open but agnostic about that.
Mm.
They're not
Yeah,
traditional church folks, and especially him.
yeah,
And I know that he was a man of science, an ophthalmologist, and um, he his wife shared with me that he enjoyed, reading the stuff I write and coming to the talks. I mean, that was about as close as to religion as he wanted to
yeah,
get,
sure.
and it was that kind of philosophical, mythological, spiritual stuff. So there's
Yeah,
still immersion in the depth and in the mystery
yes,
without the doctrine and the authority. So
sure.
it's a
Well,
it's a it's a questioning space.
yeah, I always start a funeral, unless it's an Orthodox Christian one, and I don't get asked to do a lot of those. I always start with saying all the faiths of the world talk of existence after death. All the faiths. We
Yeah.
don't know what it is,
No.
but we can hope and we can speculate and we can trust. So I think you have to be suitably vague in a hopeful kind of way, but
Yeah.
hold to your knowledge that there must be something somewhere there, that this
Yeah.
is not the. I know a friend of mine recently, a former Church of England vicar, was asked to do one of those. Around the time of Christmas, people have a lot of the memory services.
Mm.
You know, they have trees where you hang beautiful things, or you have a church service. And this friend of mine who was a former vicar, was asked to do a non-denominational spiritual Christmas service for all the departed. And we worked together on a little liturgy, which I'd be very happy to share with you if you ever thought it was useful, because these things need to be shared. They are not copyrighted. They're important.
Please send it.
I will indeed. And he did use it because I watched the video of it, and I felt so honored that I'd actually written something that was of use, that was built in it from experience, because you will be having your first experience of a correct funeral, if you like, funeral of somebody who was loved and who died at home, who knew about the process of dying, and they were with him. I was
Yeah.
asked recently to help somebody write a liturgy for a convicted serial rapist who died in prison.
Oh my gosh. How do
And
you
his
even
family
start?
said they didn't want a just cremation funeral. They wanted something said, but they wanted it valid.
Wow.
And you just sort of go, okay, God, I know that I talk with something. I'll call it God, and I know that I hear the voice, and I know that it can guide me. And I just sort of literally sat down at the computer and said, type through me,
Yeah, yeah.
type through
No,
me.
you don't outline pieces like that. You
Yeah.
you not a big fan of the word channel, but
Yeah.
you sort of get out of the way and you speak from a different part of yourself, maybe
Yeah.
that is not deliberate and maybe not as careful. It's a little trickier on the microphone,
Yeah.
because there's no rewrites. But when you're typing, you just kind of barf it out
Yeah.
and see if there's anything there that you can use.
Yeah.
So,
The fifth funeral I ever did was of my husband's best friend who was murdered, saving the life of an elderly lady who was being attacked.
oh my
Um,
goodness.
and that one was tricky because people were so angry about it.
Right.
And that would have been
Yeah.
the same with the funerals that you've done of the young men who died so tragically. There would have
Yeah.
been anger there. So
Yeah.
I had to speak to a couple of people beforehand who were doing readings, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to lay down a law at the very beginning because we can't have this as a celebration of life. This was a terrible tragedy. Well, we did celebrate his life, obviously, but I just thought
Yeah.
people are used to people saying something like, I am the resurrection and the life, saith the Lord, at the beginning of a funeral. So I thought, I'm going straight Old Testament. And I started this one standing at the entrance to the crematorium. And I said, Hear now the word of the Lord. Vengeance and recompense are in my hand, saith the Lord of hosts. I
Yeah.
will repay.
See, that's where you got to start.
And then the music
Mm.
started, which was basically, shut up. We're here to celebrate and love
Yeah.
John, not to express all
Yeah.
our rage.
Yeah. Yeah. Against the killer. Oh my goodness. And all this comes up, and I remember coming home from visiting him, and it was 2 days before Christmas, and I
Mm,
told Lori, you know, I don't know a lot about these things, Lori, but I just have a feeling he's not long
mm,
for this world. And I thought, I remember reading an article about mortality statistics spiking in January,
yeah,
that people have a tendency to hang on through the holidays, and then after that they can kind of let go. And I thought,
yeah.
I think he'll pass in January, and then he didn't
Just
make it to
went.
Christmas.
He'd done it
So
all. Yeah.
that was a lucky guess. And I claim no prophetic powers, but it just certainly seemed as though he was tired.
Mm,
There's that feeling that that the dying give you, that it's been good enough, thank you. It's been quite enough.
yeah.
And that I remember when my father was dying, the hospice nurses told my mother, sometimes the dying need to be told that it's okay to
Yeah.
go. That they hang on. I mean, it was sort of
Yeah.
pathetic, right? My very decrepit father,
Yeah.
90, feeling like he had to stick around to take care of my mom, which was the opposite of what was happening. And the hospice nurses tell him, Amy, you need to tell him it's okay to go. And I got to witness her saying that to him, and it's the most loving thing I've ever seen in my life,
Yeah.
for someone to say to a partner of 66 years, um,
It's okay to
Hilbert,
go.
it's okay. I'm going to be fine. You
Yeah.
can go. You're tired. You don't have to fight to hang on anymore. And he was gone very, very soon after that. And
Mm,
and I think that the dead kind of tell you, the dying kind of tell you that they are exhausted.
yes. Yes. When my first husband died, when I was in my 30s, we'd only been married a year, so it was all very dramatic. And he uh, he hung on until all his old colleagues from his work, he was a sound recordist, and he worked a lot in Beirut at the time of the troubles there. And all his cameraman and the assistant cameraman and the director from when they were out there came up to Birmingham, which is where we were living, Birmingham in the UK, and they spent the last night with him. He was actually in a coma by then, but it was really wonderful to hear these stories of before I'd even met him. And it
Yeah,
felt like that womb I mentioned earlier. And after they'd gone, it was 1 a.m. The local vicar turned up, my mother's vicar, and he bought a bottle of whiskey. He sat with me for 2 hours.
perfect.
And then when he went, I said one of the nurses came to me and said, I think you need to leave him now because they won't go. He won't go if you're there.
I see.
And I said, okay, but I don't know if I can. And she said, well,
Yeah.
just go for 2 hours. and he hung on. But he was the most polite of men, and he died politely at 8:25 in the morning, so he didn't disturb anybody's night.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, sometimes it is, as much as we love our fellow humans, sometimes it is a bother to have a lot of company crowding around, and,
Yes. Yeah, it
and you're
is.
stuck. You can't,
Yeah,
you
and it
can't get
may
up and leave.
be my mum had two of the hospital people with her, and she wouldn't have had to be afraid to drop her act with them.
Hmm.
She would never have said to me, I'm frightened. Never, ever once would my mother have said to me, I'm frightened. And I did try and say everything I could to, from all the experience I had, say, this is the veil you're going. It's okay. It's fine.
Yeah,
But, well, it is fine and it isn't it?
it is fine and it isn't, and I've been just really living with that this last year, and
Yeah.
especially these last few months, that two things can be true. And two very different things can be true at precisely the same time. That idea of paradox is so rich to me. And that liminal space in between the two opposing truth claims, life is infinitely meaningful. And in a way, it's kind of random and meaningless. And,
Yes.
and
But
somewhere in between,
yeah, that's
it's
our
absurd.
job. That's our
Right.
job. I call myself a patchwork prophet on Substack because I've got a friend who's definitely a patchwork saint. She's a mess, but she's an absolute saint, and I'm a mess, and I'm trying to be a prophet. But that is the role of the prophet. You hold the dichotomy, you hold the paradox.
Yeah.
You're not afraid to stay there in the middle and say, and they are both true.
Right. And so in speaking of Substack, this the birth of the dying God piece that I wrote a bit
Mhm.
ago. That is something I've been thinking a lot here in this winter season. The central Christian narrative is so connected to every other wisdom tradition that death only comes from life and life only comes from death, and that the two that great Eckhart Tolle line from Stillness Speaks that life is not the opposite of death. The opposite of death is birth.
Yeah,
Life has no opposite.
perfect.
And out of agricultural mythologies comes this idea that, as Jesus says in John, the seed must go into the ground and
Mhm.
die for there to be new life.
Yeah.
Now, that is a profound truth that uh, isn't very thoughtful of individual organisms, but it is a beautiful description of the totality, and that even you and I, to stay alive, must consume living things,
Yeah.
plant, animal product,
Yeah.
and for some of us, animals.
Yeah.
And there's no denying that life feeds on other life, and that's the biological realm in which these bodies exist. And so one must come to some kind of peace about that and say that death is the requirement of life. I don't know what good comes from the death of one man or woman. We don't see anything miraculously birthing out of that. But in the totality, these bodies are not ours. All of this material is borrowed from where it used to be in previous aggregations. It becomes us for a while.
Yeah.
And then you get into all of that. Well, is there a spirit apart from the body? And that's such an individual thing. And when you're facilitating a memorial service,
Yeah.
you can't make too many assumptions about where everyone in the room is on that.
No, you had to be a little vague, but I think this talk is a part one because
Yeah,
I've got so much more I want to say. The article
good.
was wonderful, by the way. I really, really loved it because it expressed so much that I kind of know but don't know so definitively. I know about the story of Mithras and Cybele and Attis, for example, and this story of the god that must die and resurrect. Egypt, Rome, all the ancient traditions, they have the same story, and that's what myth is. It's the great story presented in a certain way. Even the Harry Potter books are exactly the same. You have to
It's
offer your
everywhere.
life for resurrection to occur. And it's
Yeah.
so utterly important for us to understand this thing of everything is life and death. Every breath we take in, that oxygen's never going to be the same again.
Yeah.
It's
It's been
coming out as
changed.
carbon dioxide. It will then feed the trees and the plants, who will
Yeah.
then create oxygen for us. Everything is about the life and the death. And we
Yes.
humans have got so, I do think we aren't that much better without religion. We're very secular nowadays. And if I could honestly say we're better for it, I would because a lot of religion is hideous and corrupt, as we're seeing in the world. But we're also
Right.
losing that touch of mystery and that
Yes.
willingness not to know.
Yeah. And at the heart of true religion is humility. And the earth teaches us this again. Here in the northern hemisphere, it's winter. Even here in sunny San Diego, it's been raining like heck
Mm.
lately, and and yet in San Diego, winter lasts about a minute because as soon as it rains, all the seeds sprout, the
Yeah.
hills turn green. It looks like Ireland around here for the
Yeah.
next couple of weeks, and it's wonderful. It'll all be brown again by March, but but um, so the Earth is something all human beings, ever since we walked out of Africa
Yeah.
200,000 years ago, we have lived out under these stars and clouds and rain and sun, and it's only recently we put roofs and electric lights over
Yeah.
our heads, and then we start to, we buy our meat in cellophane packages at
Mhm.
the grocery store,
Yeah.
if you eat meat even,
Yeah.
let alone hunting these things down and taking their life.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're disconnected from death in a way, and the death are taken away, and so this is our job then here in this modern age to stay rooted in
Mm.
in those in those things.
Yeah. When I was very ill, a decade or so back, I couldn't sleep at night because of the treatment I was having. And it
Yes.
was summer at that point, and I literally I would go out at 1 o'clock at night and lie on a blanket on the ground with the
Mm.
stars above me. And I
Yeah.
do truly believe that was part of my healing because I just finally, it was it was actually like, did you ever see the movie Contact with Jodie Foster?
Of course.
Yes. And when she's about to go on this space journey, they can't hear her and there's got this static and she keeps going, I'm okay to go, I'm okay to go, I'm okay to go. And that was like a death. And I remember lying there and looking up and thinking, I probably can never see anything more beautiful than this. So if necessary, I'm okay to go.
Yeah. In Hinduism, the word that gets repeated so often is renunciation.
Yeah,
Um, and it means many things, but it is essentially
yeah,
that willingness to be here now in the attitude of surrender, of letting go, of not clinging to anything, but
yeah,
being present with everything.
yeah,
And that's the paradox in so many of these spiritual traditions. It is only when you let go that you receive
yeah,
everything. And you can't convince someone of that unless they experience it,
yeah.
because it sounds like the opposite. There's those two ideas both being true,
Mm,
that only when you let go do you really experience and receive everything.
yeah,
And that seems to be what so many wisdom traditions are trying to point us to. And look at this, look at this, look at
yeah.
this.
It's the one experience we all will share. We'll go there differently.
Yeah.
And it's the one experience that most of us ignore until it comes. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I,
Instantly, I have got on my Substack, please go and read Peter's Substack, The Dying God. It is
and Maggie's.
beautiful. And I've also got on mine a couple of posts ago, something called the Chapel of Liberation, which
Hmm.
is a meditation to help souls go through because it's important.
I'll go back and
Most people,
look
like
at that.
your guy's soul, his spirit will be present at that funeral and he will hear it as the final goodbye. It
Yeah.
will hear it as saying, we love you. And now it's time to go. This ceremony is here to say, we love you, goodbye, go. And we will
I've
keep
heard
your memory alive.
you and I have spoken about this before, that in
Yeah.
some ways the memorial service, the funeral, is 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 really permission for the dead to go.
Yes. Because
That
usually it would have been within 2 or 3 days of the death. Nowadays, we
yeah.
can freeze people. In
That's
those
right.
days, you had to get them in the ground quite fast.
It's this week. Yeah, it's
Yes.
happening. Right.
Yeah.
Can I close this out with a poem that I
Oh,
found, and
please. Yes,
and,
do.
and I might read this at the service. I don't know. I'll feel it out. I'll share it
Please
with
do.
with his wife. But it's Mary Oliver of course. It's called When
Yes.
Death Comes.
Yes.
When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measle pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, towards silence. And each body a lion of courage, and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. When
Oh,
Death Comes by Mary Oliver. Isn't that wonderful?
it is. And very suitable for closing. Thank you, Peter. And thank
Thank you,
you,
Maggie.
everybody. We'll see you next month.
Bye bye.